What's the purpose of the Arch Linux high striped Rust dev socks? Like, do they help? Do they help with circulation? Is there a purpose to them, or
Okay, there's a long bit of lore to that. Using Rust and using Arch, like eventually using it will turn you trans, and that's like kind of where the socks come in.
no? Because people spend a lot of time sitting down. They don't do a lot of physical
They're
activity.
not good for your circulation. No? Especially not for my legs. Niri is a bit different to a regular tiler. So this is actually a scrolling window manager where I can make another window here, and basically I have infinite horizontal space. So I can say, if I want to put this one here, I have all three of these windows here. I can spawn another one off to the side.
And what are your thoughts on currently the state of? Let's start with Windows. Are you a Windows fan still, or what are your thoughts?
If you're listening to this as a podcast, remember that it was originally recorded as a video. If you're not following along, you can go to my YouTube channel. My username is linkarzu. And if you want to support me to keep this podcast going, you can donate in Ko-fi. I'm going to leave a link in the description. All right, so let's get started with this chapter then.
What are we doing today? We have a special guest, Brodie. How's it going, man?
Yeah, not too bad. Not too bad. How about yourself?
I'm doing good as well. You know, really appreciate you being here. It's kind of late where you are, right?
It's only 9:40 p.m. here. The funny thing is, I actually was doing someone else's show earlier today. No one ever invites me to anything, and today I'm doing two people's shows, so it's a nice change for me.
Nice. Really appreciate it, man. It's tiring doing all these videos, right? And well, who are you? I know who you are, but just in case there's people that don't know, you mind sharing a little bit about you? Like, what do you do?
My main thing is making Linux videos. I do that. Well, it's Linux and a lot of general tech stuff as well. Sometimes I'll talk about, programming. I'll talk about other random things. But for the most part, it's Linux stuff on the main channel. And I also do my own podcast, Tech of a T, where I've done, I think it's 273, 4, something like that, somewhere in that range. Just bringing on random people, learning about open source developers, learning what people are doing in this world, and just, meeting people and learning a bit.
And I was curious, is there a reason why you kept those separate? Because this is your name, right? So you could have kept them here. Is there a reason why you kept the podcast in a different channel?
The main reason for that is YouTube. I don't know if they still do it, but I know YouTube for a while did sort of punish the promotion of videos if you uploaded multiple things in a day. So if I wanted to do the podcast and then clips for it, maybe I could have a separate clip channel. But if I just have the podcast itself, it's not really going to get recommended when the other video gets uploaded. So it kind of throws everything off. It makes a lot more sense to have them separated so they don't interfere with each other.
I have thought about that too, because I'm doing these interviews and everything is mixed in my channel. I have a playlist and I created a podcast there, but I don't know how it works. I haven't done clips on my own, these long videos. So what happens if I create a clip and I share it in the same channel? Will I have some sort of trouble?
Look, YouTube's kind of a black box, and I can't really say exactly how it's going to behave, but that's my general understanding, that if you do upload multiple things in a day, things can kind of get a bit weird with actually sending videos out to your audience. So I think it makes more sense to separate it, but I know some people do it all together on one thing anyway, so I guess try it out, see what happens, and if it goes well, stick with it. If it doesn't, you can always change it afterwards.
Yeah. I see you have 103,000 subscribers in the main channel. Why did you get started with YouTube? Like, why did that happen? Why did you decide to take that step?
Well, this isn't my first channel. I think if you go to the About section, it should show you the age of this channel. I want to say it's like 20... Because I've had it before... Yeah, there you go, 2013. I've had it before. I was actually making videos on the channel. I uploaded like random things here and there, like, you know, oh, I saw some funny looking bird, upload a video. All of that stuff's gone now. But I've had a channel basically since, I want to say like 2007. I've been making videos here and there, random things. Back then, it was a lot of like gaming videos. I did some like RuneScape videos, things like that. I took my hand at like doing some art stuff at one point. You're not going to find that on that channel. I'm saving the name of that channel for a special occasion because there are still videos on the old one. But yeah, I've sort of always enjoyed doing that. I was never really the kind of person who really talked much when I was like at school. I'm not really the kind of person who likes to, you know, I guess be that like center of attention generally in real life. But for whatever reason, I kind of enjoy the idea of digging through these topics and then I guess putting them together in a easily consumable form. And that's kind of what the main channel is. It's a lot of the time taking some, you know, really long mailing list thread or something like that and then breaking it down so people kind of know what's sort of going on without having to go and do all that digging themselves.
And I see that on your main channel, you have moved away to something more like a news type of thing. Is that right? Like, did you ever do tutorials, like tech tutorials, or?
Early on, I definitely did a lot more of that, and I kind of want to shift more back in that direction. As I do like doing the news stuff, but I also just like to dig into. It's less tutorial stuff, more digging into various. You know, I've done videos on like different shells, on different window managers, on things like Neovim, and I like to dig into stuff like that rather than doing, you know, your general like this is how you install Linux kind of tutorial. If I'm going to do that, it's going to be for something very specific, like, you know, doing something on like the Arch Linux install script. I have tried my hand at more general tutorials as well, but I don't know. I feel like there's people who can handle that stuff better. I find the like deep diving into a specific topic a lot more interesting, and I feel like I can handle that a lot better than just, you know, there's like hundreds of tutorials on how to use the terminal, right? I don't really think I have anything to add to that.
Okay, interesting. And do you do YouTube full time, or do you do something else?
So right now I basically can do it full time. I'm not at this stage. I still have another job. I work there a few hours a week. The main reason I haven't is I always feel like at some point something's going to just collapse, and I'm always worried that, like, you know, I wake up one day, DMCA strikes, channels disappeared, and now I have nothing. So I haven't gotten to that point where I just feel comfortable taking that next step and actually doing it full time. But effectively, I am, right? Like the amount of hours I'm putting into it, it's pretty much full time. It's just technically I have another job.
Okay. And would you recommend someone trying to start a channel do it? How do you say the process has been? Is YouTube easy?
Look, working on an oil rig is hard, right? I make videos, I read things on the internet, and I talk to a camera. It's not actually hard, but it is definitely time consuming, and trying to find I think you've got to find the thing you're actually interested in, because a lot of people will say, oh, I'm going to make a channel, I'm going to make this, I'm going to make that. But if you don't personally find the thing you're doing interesting, you're not going to keep at it. And yes, there are these channels that kind of blow up after like 1 or 2 videos, absolutely. But the majority are not. The majority are going to be, you will grind, you will make a lot of videos, you'll make a lot of things no one cares about. And if you don't care about it yourself, like, you're not going to keep at it. Maybe you'll do it for a month, 2 months, 3 months. But if you don't like what you're doing, you are going to give up eventually.
Yeah. Pretty good points. I almost gave up, you know. I just did like 3 months. No one watched the videos, and I was like, nah, why am I even doing this? I don't even know if I will continue doing this. I hope I will, you know. But it's really tough. It's discouraging. a lot of the times. But I guess you just have to keep going, right?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah, if it's something you actually want to do, I think you need to be able to enjoy doing it just as a hobby, because there's going to be that long period where, especially when you're trying to like get your foot in the door and try to like establish that initial audience, where you can't be motivated by the number of views you're going to get. It's it's fun to be like, oh, this video got 100 views. Wow, this video got 1,000 views. That's cool. But if that's the only thing that's driving you early on, like, you are really going to struggle.
Yeah. Yep. And I have a question here. Do you take sponsorships? I watch your videos, but I don't think I have seen like this video is sponsored by, the usual stuff like NordVPN and all that stuff. Do you take sponsorships in your videos, or what's your take?
I have worked with a company in the past. I was sponsored by Linode before they got purchased by Akamai. When they got purchased, they just like cut all of their sponsors. So wasn't working with them anymore. I think they might have reestablished with a couple of really big channels afterwards, but before that point, they were kind of like working with basically everyone. I'm more than happy to work with a sponsor, but at least, okay, there's two separations here. On the main channel, I kind of want to deal with sponsors I actually like. Mm-hmm. So, working with Linode, or like, if it's going to be a VPN company, I want to be able to talk about it as a real product. I don't want to say things like military grade encryption, quantum encryption, using this is going to protect people from spying on you. I don't want to do that. And I don't really want to work with like a mobile game company unless I actually like the game. So yeah, like, if it's a company I like, let's throw an example out there, like boot.dev. This is a company that's been sponsoring a lot of YouTube channels recently. They're like they gamify learning programming. I would happily work with them. On the podcast, however, I will work with anyone, because the podcast. Look, if someone wants me to sell something dumb, hey, that'll be totally fine.
Oh, you don't care there too much.
No, the podcast, I think if someone wants me to work with something dumb, I'm more than happy to just like have some fun with that one.
Even if it's a mobile game, whatever, right? Okay, interesting.
Especially if they let me have some fun with the ad.
Okay. Now, moving on to other topics, you want to share two of your favorite music bands? What are you into music?
I'm kind of into a bit of everything. Like, I grew up, like, my parents were, like, really into, like, AC/DC and Susie Quattro and things like that. So I kind of have, like, there's a part of me that really enjoys that. I enjoy, things like Linkin Park, 3 Days Grace. I like nowadays, I like a lot of anime music. Like, it's really hard for me to just, like, pin down two specific things, but you know what? Let's say Linkin Park and Slipknot. There we go. There's two we can go with.
How old are you, by the way?
I'm 27.
27. Okay, so you still watched Linkin Park in MTV back in the day?
A little. That's a little bit before my time. At least in Australia, MTV wasn't really. I think it was a thing on like paid TV, and we didn't have that, so.
Okay. Now that you mentioned Australia, how is the situation there with insects? I hear that it's not that great. Are there a lot of spiders, crazy stuff, or it's just fake news?
I think it's definitely a bit overblown for sure. Like, yes, you'll see the odd spider, and yes, they're going to be fairly large. But for the most part, it's going to be fairly harmless spiders, like a daddy long legs, where like it's not gonna hurt you. Flies are something people don't talk about. Flies you get a lot of in the summer. If you're anywhere even remotely rural, you're going to be covered in flies. Mosquitoes come out constantly as well. Honestly, the thing that people don't talk about, which is a lot more concerning, is snakes. Snakes are like a spider. A spider's not. Look, you can just step on a spider. What's a spider going to do to you?
But what
you
if you're sleeping? What if you're sleeping and you don't? What if you're sleeping and you don't notice, right? And it bites you.
Yeah, if you're sleeping, it's not gonna hurt you. Usually, if a spider's gonna bite you, it's because you've gone into its like territory. You've gone like put your hand near a burrow, something like that. Snakes are a lot more concerning because you can just be walking through tall grass when it's when they're on their way to a rock to get some like sun, and if you step on one, you're not gonna kill the snake by stepping on it. You're gonna be in for some trouble there.
Do you wear boots or something just to?
Oh, look, a lot of people kind of get used to it and don't really care, but I tend to wear enclosed shoes when I'm whenever I'm walking somewhere that I can't see the ground.
Okay. And what about movies? Are you into movies?
Not as much as I used to be. Like my parents, they had like a big DVD collection, a VHS collection before that. Nowadays, I don't really watch that much in the way of movies. I will say that I am a big fan of the Fast and the Furious series.
Okay, so those are your.
When I watch a movie, I kind of like to turn my brain off. I don't really want to deal with a movie where it's like deep plot, really have to think about it. There's some things I will like that are like that, where it's like a really meaningful movie, like Forrest Gump, something like that. But a lot of the time, I just want to watch like a dumb action movie, like a Jason Statham movie, Fast and the Furious, something like that.
Just to entertain yourself, basically.
John Wick,
okay,
that sort of deal.
Okay, and are you into video games? I see that you play sometimes in lives, right? What video games are you into?
For the most part, I like a lot of sort of character action games and RPGs, things like that. Right now on my stream, I'm playing through Kazan the First Berserker, which is basically Dark Souls. And yeah, I've played the main thing I usually go to is like JRPGs, like really long JRPGs, like Final Fantasy, things like that.
And have you felt as you age, right? Because I'm older, I'm 37 at the moment. I used to play games when I was younger, but as I age, I feel that I just don't want to invest my time in games anymore. Have you felt that, or you're still like full into games?
Definitely my taste in games has changed. Like when I was younger, I used to play a lot of Call of Duty and other like multiplayer games where there wasn't really any sort of progression through the game. It's you're playing the game against other people. You're playing the game to sort of improve at the game. My love for JRPGs is kind of a more modern thing. I've always kind of enjoyed them, but I used to play a lot more of games like that, or games like RuneScape and like other MMOs where sort of there's no ending point to them. Whereas now I kind of enjoy games where it's kind of like the opposite of the way I watch movies. Like where a lot of the times with movies, I just want kind of nothing. But with games, I kind of want that in-depth story, the interesting character arcs, things like that. And then I do like my just, my action games where I can turn my brain off as well. But that's sort of secondary in a lot of cases.
Okay. Now, I have a question, and it's an honest question. It may seem like a joke, but what's the purpose of the Arch Linux high striped Rust dev socks? Like, do they help? Do they help with circulation? Is there a purpose to them, or?
Okay, there's a long bit of lore to that. Where I don't even know how to explain to someone who asked that question. I don't even know. Like, I have the answer, but I don't even know where to begin. Basically, I guess the meme is that like there's this whole like long running joke that using Rust and using Arch, like eventually using it will turn you trans, and that's like kind of where the socks come in. There's a lot more to it. That's like the surface level thing. It's like an I guess an ironic Like the socks are kind of an ironic thing. I don't know how to explain it to someone who asked this question.
But I
just
get
know it's basically like it's a really long inside joke.
But do people actually use them, or is it just a meme?
It's kind of like it's a bit of both, where it's kind of a meme to some people. Like I have them as a joke. I have like cat ears as a joke because I think they're funny. But for a lot of other people, it's kind of this aesthetic of being like a Linux user. It's like, oh, I use Arch Linux. I have a ThinkPad. I don't know. I wear the programmer socks, the striped socks, and it's like this. It's kind of, I guess the simplest way to put it is it's kind of the same thing as like, you know, someone who is emo. Like it's like this is the look of being an Arch user. This is the look of being an emo. It's basically that.
Oh, okay. Now, because people spend a lot of time sitting down, they don't do a lot of physical
They're
activity.
not good for your circulation. No? Especially not for my legs. No, definitely not. Just get up and walk around. I've got a standing desk here for a reason.
Okay. Now, you mind sharing with us a little bit about your background and how you ended up in tech? Like, how did it start? Did your family raise you with, were tech people in your family? Like, what made you love tech? Was it school, or how did all that start?
To the question of other tech people in my family, absolutely not. My mum and my dad both came from farming backgrounds. Their families been farmers for generations. I am basically the tech person in my family. But I think it's sort of started before I got into computers. I've always been the kind of person who, if you hand me a torch, for example, I'm going to pull it apart. I'm going to work out how the torch works. How does the battery connect to the light? Like how does the light turn on? You know, things like that. And I've always sort of enjoyed that sort of aspect of it. I didn't have a computer until I didn't have a family computer, I reckon, until like 2006, actually. So I was 8 or so then. And that's sort of when things started, because that's when I sort of got on the internet. And I had a cousin who was a software developer at the time, and I kind of got interested in like using software, and like at some point after that, I kind of got interested in the idea of like, okay, well, I like tearing things apart. Well, what happens if you tear software apart? Like how do you make software? Like what goes into that? And it's sort of evolved from there. I started watching tech YouTube channels like Linus Tech Tips. I eventually built my first computer. And somewhere along the line, I heard about this Linux thing. I think the first time I heard about Linux, I don't know if it was from this, but one of the early times was definitely when the Steam machines were coming around. Like Valve's first attempt at doing Linux gaming. But I didn't use Linux back then at all. I think what changed things for me is late high school, I had... Well, before that, I had... Yeah. Sorry, I'm trying to, like, remember the history myself. So, my 10th grade, we had a robotics class. We were doing, like, Lego Mindstorms. So, it's a little Lego kit where you can do, like, electronic stuff and build little robots with it. I had a lot of fun with that. I thought it was really cool. It was, like, a combination of the software stuff I was getting interested in, and then also hardware stuff. Then in my 11th and 12th grade, we had an actual programming class doing Java. It was like game development with Java. It was with this really basic library called Greenfoot, and I really, really enjoyed that. And a lot of the friends I had at the time were also into that as well. Some of them have gone on to do indie game development. And from there, I was just like, you know what? Let's actually pursue this thing. And I ended up going to university for software engineering. And yeah, somewhere along the line there, I actually swapped to Linux because, I'm a software developer. I was learning this Git thing. One of my lecturers was using Linux. I think he was using Arch at the time. Yeah, I reckon it was Arch and i3. I was like, okay, let's just see what it's like. I discovered Linux YouTubers, and then I decided to be one because I thought I could make better videos than them, and they weren't initially.
Yeah, makes sense. Okay, so and what does your family think about what you do? Like, Do they agree with you doing YouTube channels? Do they understand? Or is it like, Brodie, like, what's happening, man? Like, how do they feel?
So my mum, obviously, you know, being a mum, was kind of concerned early on, especially when I went through my degree. And it's like, well, I'm going to do this YouTube thing now. I'm not going to go get a programming job. She's like, oh, well, you know, you can get a programming job eventually. Every so often she asks me about it, like, oh, are you going to apply? You're going to go do a programming job? I get it, right? Like, she's concerned and like wants me to do well in life. My sister, she doesn't really care. She does her own thing. To be fair, like, she's just kind of happy to be done with university. She was too bothered by like her own stuff for the past couple of years. And my stepdad, he's, you know, pretty chill with it as well. He's just like, you know, that's cool. I've never really had any like pushback for it because I didn't really start doing it until I'd moved out anyway. So, you know, it was kind of a bit too late for my parents to do any like major pushback against it. It's like, I don't live with you anymore. You can't stop me doing this.
And do other people in your family understand your passion for Linux and IT and that stuff, or are you just the only one?
So I mentioned that cousin I had who's a software developer. I'd never mentioned that I had a channel. Randomly, he messaged me. I was like, hey, I got a recommendation for one of your videos. I was like, I didn't know you were doing this. That's cool. I was like, yeah, thank you. I appreciate it. A lot of the rest of my family, because my, you know, I was saying the farming background, a lot of them also don't really have much of a tech background as well. So for a lot of them, I basically just explain what I'm doing as I'm a technology journalist. And that's usually enough, because the second I say I make YouTube videos, I get the obvious question, how do you make money on YouTube? What do they pay you for? How much do you get paid? Like, do you ask everybody you meet how much their salary is? Like,
yeah. When I had to explain my job to my dad, you know, I was a monitoring engineer in the previous company. I used to manage monitoring tools, you know, tools that the company uses to monitor whatever they needed to monitor. Try to explain that to your parents. It's like, but what do you do? And he asked me like 3, 4, 5 times. He doesn't get it yet. It's
right.
hard to explain all these stuff. Yeah. And
yeah, I get it.
Are you, I have noticed that all of the people that do tech stuff are into instruments. I had a call with Distro I don't know, a few weeks ago, I think, and he's in the trombone. He was in the trombone. I don't know if he still does or not. Are you into any instruments?
Yes. At the same time, I just don't put the effort into. I just don't really put the effort into practicing.
Yeah.
So I have a guitar back here. I don't know if you can see it with the way the camera's cropped.
Oh, I see it.
Yeah,
Okay.
there we go. Yeah, I have a guitar back there. I just don't practice it anywhere near as much as I should, so I'm not very good. But yeah, I don't know why that would be the case. Why people in the tech space sort of are also interested in
music, in an instrument. Well. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe it's. I don't know. I'm sure somebody's probably can probably come up with some idea for that. I do want to get a keyboard. I kind of want to learn the keyboard, but I also don't have space. That's the ultimate problem for like anything. It's like, okay, I could do it, but like, where am I going to put it?
Yeah. Could it be that we were looking for fame in music, we didn't get it, and now we're trying to do it in YouTube?
I don't know, maybe for some people, but I started a couple of years ago, so for me, I was long into doing the YouTube thing already.
Okay, you started with YouTube first. Okay. And we already went over this. Okay, your editor. We're moving to to more technical stuff right now. What's your main editor as of today?
If I'm dealing with just general like config files, things like that, I'll usually just use. I just go with Neovim. I've tried to get into doing programming in Neovim, and it's just never clicked with me. So my main code editor, that is going to be VS Code. if I'm I also do stuff with Godot, and when I'm doing that, I just use the editor that's built into it. But yeah, generally it's going to be VS Code.
Okay, if you want to get serious work done, VS Code for config files, readmes, markdown, stuff like that, I assume Neovim.
Yeah. Also, that's also what I use for my I see the next thing on the thing you have there. You're going to ask about note taking. Yep. It's going to be the same answer for that. Note taking, I use VimWiki for, which is a plugin for Vim. I've considered doing the whole Obsidian thing, and yeah, I get it. Obsidian's really cool, but at the same time, I've used VimWiki for 5 years. So moving off of that's the problem with moving to any of these new tools. I don't want to move 5 years worth of notes.
Yeah, for sure. But the Obsidian app itself, is that what you have thought about? The Obsidian app, or
that would, if I did go to something else, it would be Obsidian. Yes.
Well, just my personal experience. I did Obsidian for quite some time, and I just moved back to Neovim. Well, I started with Neovim after, and I just moved everything from Obsidian to Neovim, because basically Obsidian is just, markdown files. You create a vault, which is technically a folder. So I just opened my Obsidian folder in Neovim, and I do everything there. Image viewing. I can even paste images. So I don't need Obsidian anymore. And well, once I started with Neovim a lot, I didn't have the Vim power that I needed back in Obsidian. So it started to feel not enough for me anymore. So I just decided, I'm not using Obsidian anymore. I'm full Neovim now. So do you use VimWiki? Do you use it in Neovim or Vim?
Neovim.
Neovim. Okay. Now, do you use your own distribution or your own config in Neovim, or do you use a distribution?
I use my own config. This sort of comes from when I was planning to do programming stuff and properly learn Neovim for that. I've pieced something together over many, many years. I haven't even converted it over to Lua yet, because I had it from back on regular Vim, so it's in the vimrc format. I've moved it over, and then I've done random reworks and all this stuff. And just it's one of those things where I know I probably should, and there's a bunch of outdated plugins as well, and I just don't have the interest in messing around with it at this point to really bring it to a good state.
Yeah, and it's gonna be not only a day of work, that's just gonna be probably months of work. So
yeah.
I guess you don't want to take that jump, right?
Not right now. Maybe at some point. I can mess with it anytime in the future.
And have you thought about trying a distribution like lazyvim, for example?
I have. I've played around with a couple of them in the past. The problem I find whenever I do that, and it's the same problem I have with something like Oh My ZSH, I never remember the bindings that other people make, the shortcuts, any weird commands they do. It's the same problem I have when I use a different window manager. I want to configure things to be the thing that I'm comfortable with. So effectively, I end up just rewriting the config myself. So I guess I could use something like that as a baseline for a lot of the functionality, and then rebind things to sort of bring it to the state I'm happy with. But again, it's just not something that I've really felt the need to do, at least anytime soon.
Okay, makes sense. What tool do you use to push to version control? Do you use the command line, or do you use a tool?
I use regular Git.
Yep. Okay.
I learned regular Git. I've messed around with I've used Turtle over on Windows. I've used the GitHub GUI a couple of times. If I'm going to use something besides Git, I'm going to use the GitHub CLI tool. But usually Git does 99% of what I want anyway.
Okay. Have you tried LazyGit?
That I have tried. The problem that I always run into with any of the GUIs, any of the TUIs, any of the like interfaces on top of Git is even if it's not explicit, they tend to implicitly push you towards a certain kind of workflow. And if that workflow aligns with the way you want to use Git, it's great. If you ever run into a situation where you're sort of like butting heads with the way it wants you to work, it ends up just feeling less convenient than just using Git commands. And again, I tend to like shortcut stuff that I want to be using anyway, so I'm not even writing out the full Git commands. I'll write scripts around stuff that I want to be using. So I'm kind of like building up my own tooling around Git anyway, just to work the exact way I want it to work.
Okay, great. What are your thoughts on Tmux? Are you a big Tmux fan or not at all?
I kind of get the Tmux thing, but for me, I've always been a big tiling window manager user. So it's kind of a lot of the stuff I want from Tmux, being able to like place tiles of my terminals. I do get the whole benefit of the SSH session stuff. That's great. And if I did that more often, I probably would use Tmux. But my desktop basically does the majority of what I want from Tmux: the tabbing, the tiling. So for me, like, I kind of have my entire desktop kind of feels like Tmux.
Yeah, similar to what DistroTube said. He uses the window manager. But there's a question that I have, for tiling users, because I'm not a tiling user. I don't like tiles. Isn't it too complicated? Like thinking, okay, so I need to have just 2 applications on this screen, because if I open a third one, it's just going to make it smaller and it's just not going to make sense at all, right? So do you have to be moving stuff around, organizing windows? Isn't that too cumbersome?
So yes, with a regular tiler. And I can show you a bit of a demo here. I'm not actually using a regular tiler at this point.
Okay. Let me switch to your screen. There we go.
So right now I'm using a tool called Niri. So we spawn a window like that. I can make it take up the entire screen if I want to. And there we go. We have like 2 windows here. But Niri is a bit different to a regular tiler. So this is actually a scrolling window manager where I can make another window here. And basically I have infinite horizontal space. So I can say, if I want to put this one here, I have all 3 of these windows here. I can spawn another one off to the side. So this is something I've been trying out very recently, and it kind of eliminates that like space problem, because now if I have too many windows open, I can still go to a second workspace and add something here, but I don't really have that like space concern that you would have had with most other things that people are using. I have traditionally used things that like people like DT have been using, and I do like them. But this, I do think is a much better way to do it.
And don't you have to be searching for stuff? Like you have to keep track in your mind, like where stuff are, right? Isn't that a problem? Like, okay, so I remember that I have this application on desktop 1, the other one opened in desktop 3. Like, do you have to be jumping around and trying to find the thing that you're actually looking for?
If you're unorganized, yes, but if you are comfortable using a tiler, you tend to sort of fall into a idea of like, okay, I'm going to put this specific thing here, I'm going to put this thing here, and this window over here. So you kind of learn where you end up placing things. And a lot of tilers also allow you to name your workspaces as well. So you can say, this is my terminal workspace, this is my development workspace, and then sort of use that as like a mental guide. So you place things in logical groupings where you don't end up losing them.
Okay, makes sense. I have to give tiles a try, I don't know. I'm just used to stacking mode, so I don't know. Yeah. And operating system, next question, of course, everyone knows what it is, but why did you choose Linux as your main operating system? And what were you on before Linux?
So I was on Windows 10 right before, but for a long time I actually was a macOS user as well. Mavericks. That was the last one I've used. So it was a while ago, but I did use, I think I used macOS from, I reckon, Snow Leopard to Mavericks. Because my high school, they used MacBooks as their like school laptops. So I kind of got used to the macOS stuff from that. The reason why I ended up going to Linux is I was using a lot of Linux tooling in university. I was using Git. I was using, GCC and all of, like various other tools you're going to be using either in a Linux virtual machine or nowadays through something like WSL. And I really got interested in what these Linux YouTubers were doing. You say you kind of really don't get the tiler thing, the whole managing Windows, but I started seeing videos of people using tilers like DT and like a bunch of other people, and I really liked the idea. I thought it was super cool. I'd never seen something like that, and I really wanted to try it out and just see what it was like. So I kind of just dived headfirst into it, going straight from Windows 10 to Arch Linux. I did it at a bad time. I did it at the start of university semester. Wouldn't recommend it.
And you bought the socks at the same time? Or you got those later?
No, I got the socks a bit later.
Okay.
But yeah, I was using a lot of Linux tooling anyway, so it kind of just made sense to use Linux.
Okay. And what are your thoughts on currently the state of, let's start with Windows. Are you a Windows fan still? Or what are your thoughts?
I've become less and less interested in Windows over the years. Like initially, because I do that whole, I like gaming. I like PC gaming. When I first switched, there was definitely a lot more games where Linux just really couldn't do it. And Windows, I kind of had there as a backup for a couple of games. But now that we're in the whole Windows 11 thing with all of the like data collections, even more data collection stuff, the like direct OS integration with AI tooling, using that to train on your OS data without your consent, the even more inclusion of ads directly in the operating system, just like I can't. Like, anytime I have someone ask me to help them with something on Windows, like, I'll try, but I just don't care at all about Windows at this point.
It's not a fan at all. Do you consider that you hate Windows?
I guess so, but I'm also not going to tell someone not to use the thing they like. If Windows is working for you, if Windows is the thing you need for your workflow, it's your computer, it's your life, do the thing you want to use. If I can convince you to use Linux, hey, that's awesome. Come try it and see what it's like. But if Windows is doing what you want it to do, it doesn't really bother me.
Okay, makes sense. Yeah, I was recently hired at a new company, and I'm going to be using Windows, a ThinkPad with Windows. I try to go with a different operating system. There's no choice, it's just one of those big corporate. So there's nothing you can do. So, and Mac, what are your thoughts on Mac recently? Have you played with it recently, or?
I have been so out of the loop with macOS for so long. I have no idea what's happening in the Apple ecosystem.
Okay. So you don't have any thoughts on macOS at the moment?
Not really. I haven't heard anyone really complaining about it. I know Apple's just doing the normal Apple thing they do where they come 5 years late to something and they say they invented it by giving it a new name. But besides that, like, I saw a recent Apple event where they announced that iPadOS has a calculator now and everyone cheered. So I don't know.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I didn't use macOS back in the day, but now it's a little bit better, I would say. You get at least window managers and you have a few options, right? So it's getting better if you're more into the Linux side of things. It's not Linux, of course, it's not as cool as Linux, but you have a few options. So I would say it's decent at the time. And do you think there's like a rivalry between the macOS and Linux communities, or what are your thoughts there?
I can't really speak for anybody else. I have quite a few Mac viewers in my audience because a lot of the tooling we use on Linux, because it's like a lot of it has that Unix base, it's going to work just fine on Mac. And like, I don't really, I don't know. I feel like a lot of the people who use Apple devices aren't really techie people to begin with. Obviously, there's like weird switch where a lot of my university professors were hard Apple people. They were developers on Apple because they used to use Unix back in the 80s. And Apple was kind of like it's the modern corporate Unix. But I don't really find there's much rivalry. I sort of feel like a lot of people, I don't know, I feel like a lot of people are like fairly welcoming of it. And there's a lot of big projects I know that are developed by Apple people. They work great on Linux and vice versa as well. And yeah, at least from my experience, it doesn't seem like it.
Okay. Now, I asked this question to DistroTube as well, because I did watch your PewDiePie video, the reaction that you did. What are your thoughts? Like, on him bringing a lot of new people over to Linux. What are your thoughts on that?
So I actually have a plan to do a video, a sort of follow-up video to this, sort of comparing the way that Linus Tech Tips did their video and PewDiePie did his video. Because I feel like with PewDiePie, he genuinely wanted to learn Linux. He wanted to become a Linux user and wanted to understand like why this was a thing that people like. And he came out of that really enjoying it. And I think that was very beneficial because it wasn't someone sitting there for 20 minutes just complaining about Linux. Yeah, there were certainly problems, absolutely. But it sort of like showed what Linux was capable of and made people excited for it. And I saw a lot of people trying it out after that. Whereas with the LTT stuff, they kind of just I don't know if they wanted, if Luke seemed like he was going fine with it, but Linus, I don't know if he wanted to come out of it hating it or what the goal was there, but I feel like there are a lot of problems there that could have been addressed with just a little bit more thought. And it's just like the second something goes wrong, give up, the thing's broken, move on to something new.
Yeah, it's like if someone would ask me to review Windows right now, I would probably wouldn't do my best job and wouldn't make it look good. Something like that happened with Linus and Linux, right? And you mentioned LTT. Did you were you a fan of Anthony? Well, it was Anthony back then. It's now Emily. Like, did you enjoy Anthony's back in the day videos?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. No, I felt like that was some of the best content that was coming out of LTT, and like I think at this I know that LTT's talked about wanting to do another Linux series, and what I'd really wished happened is there was sort of like a discussion with Linux people about like what went wrong there, like how to fix problems. And I don't know, I do think having some sort of Linux voice around, whether it be Emily or whether it be anyone else, like having someone there who's actually a Linux user who can really talk like through the problems, because yes, it's one thing to go in blind. Most people aren't going in blind. Like, they're going in with YouTube videos. They're going in with tutorials. They might have a friend who uses Linux who can guide you through things when you have a problem.
So I was subscribed to the LTT channel. I used to enjoy their videos. Emily's videos, I used to enjoy them. That's the ones that I watched the most, right? But ever since Emily left, I don't watch them. I unsubscribed from the channel. I watch a few of them sometimes just to see what's going on, and I just see marketing stuff, ads, basically, right? So would you like to see Emily back in the channel, or what are your thoughts there with LTT?
She's moved on for I don't know what reasons she'd left the company. I'm sure there's some reasons there. I would like them just to have some I don't know, like I'm sure they've heard this plenty of times, like, more go back to the roots, what the channel used to be, like doing a lot of like fun tech stuff. I feel like LTT is one of those channels that's hired so many people that they can't really make a change because they need to make the videos as sort of general as possible, get as many views as possible, because if they don't do that, you can't afford all of the employees you've got at this point. The ship's basically too big to turn.
Yeah, it's turning like into a Mr. Beast type of thing, I guess. Right? Okay. And this is something else that I also asked DT advice about. Like, I've been wanting to try Linux, but I don't know which distro to play around with. What I'm looking for is this stability. Mainly, I want to turn my computer on and I want it to work. I want to record videos, and I just want the audio to work, OBS to work, and everything else, to work as well. That's the reason why I'm still in macOS. But what would you say is a good distro to try? I don't want to be installing dependencies. If I'm going to install a package that is going to break other packages, I'm probably not into that. So
Right. Well, I've been an Arch Linux user for the past 5 years. I'm not going to tell you to use Arch Linux, but honestly, you can't really go wrong with. I know people want to recommend various different fancy things, but you can't really go wrong with a basic recommendation like Ubuntu or like Fedora. Like, everything's gonna have problems because you're not having the full level of testing that you get from something like a Mac OS or Windows. Like, you're gonna run into a lot more issues because of that. But of the things that are out there, like, there's absolutely nothing wrong with those as recommendations. I do think it's kind of a hit and miss for some people, but I would generally steer people clear of the GNOME desktop as their first experience, just because it is such a different kind of way to use a system. I guess coming from macOS, it's probably more familiar, but I would still probably push someone more towards the KDE side, so Kubuntu or Fedora KDE.
Let me just quickly show you my screen so you can maybe have a better idea of how I use it, and recommend something there. So, this is your screen. This is my screen here. Okay. So one app on the screen at a time. I go to my browser, terminal. If I go to YouTube, I'm not going to open YouTube because I don't know if I have my analytics up there or something, but that's basically what I do, just a single app on the screen, window manager, basic stuff. I don't need fancy animations, if you notice, I just switch between the apps like that. And that's the way that I switch between basically all the different applications with keyboard shortcuts. Just a bar on the top that tells me like the application that I'm on and a few other things that I just need to see, like if I have packages that I need to update. That's why I have this little icon here that tells me you have 10 packages that you need to update. So I just go and update every now and then, right? So basically this, I don't need anything fancy. I just need something stable and that looks cool. I don't want it to look really outdated and stuff like that, but stability and just this basic functionality. I don't know if the window manager I should use is i3 or if there's something else that I should be aiming for.
Well, if this is the kind of workflow you're doing, honestly, yeah, window manager would make a lot more sense to you. Like, when I start recommending, this is a problem, right? Like, if I'm going to recommend something, I want someone to be going straight to Wayland. But I don't like. I don't know the full extent of your workflow. I don't know if there's anything currently on Wayland that wouldn't work for you. The Wayland version of i3 would be Sway in that case. But I do think try out i3 and just see how that goes. And there is a i3 version of Fedora if you wanted to use that, Fedora i3. And that should give you like a good starting point to work off from there.
Okay, and what is Wayland? Is it like the window manager? Because I just hear all these words in your videos, Wayland, compositors. Right. I have no idea. I just know that window managers exist in macOS, but in Linux, you guys talk about so much different stuff that I'm confused.
Right, understandable. Okay, so X11 is this protocol set from 1984. Yeah. This has been the basis for Unix graphics since then. Like, whether we're talking Linux now, I guess Linux back in the early 2000s, Sun, and pretty much every other Unix system that's come along since then. You actually can use X11 on macOS as well. I think there's a thing called Zephyr? Something like that. I don't know. I don't remember what it's called. But there is a way you can make use of that as well. So this is like a really old protocol set that was being used for graphics. And being an old protocol set, it was designed at a very different time for using a system. Back when, you know, the original reason it was designed is universities would have a big main system and then people would connect to it from a terminal. So you didn't have these individual personal systems. You would basically be using one big computer and then remote into that. Whereas Wayland is a more modern approach, started around the early 2000s, specifically designed around personal computer use. And there's a lot of sort of, I guess, security flaws that exist inherently in X11 because of the way it was designed. Like no access control for your shortcuts, for example. So writing a keylogger on X11 takes 2 lines of Python code. But my only reason for being kind of wary of recommending Wayland is there are things that are still a work in progress, like global shortcuts for OBS. So if you want to use your like key bindings in OBS when the window is not, like when you don't have the cursor over the window, that's something you'd want to have, their global shortcuts. Or you want to use like push to talk in Discord, that would also be global shortcuts. Most things have gotten pretty solid, and the majority of Linux users now are using a Wayland-based environment. But there's still those issues where things can kind of be a little bit rough. But by going X11, you lose out on a lot of modern display features like variable refresh rate and different refresh rates on different monitors and other things which are nice to have. So it's the better solution to go with Wayland. It's just there's like issues there that you might run into depending on the kind of system you're using, where it makes it kind of hard to recommend it without really having a full understanding of everything else you're using. But basically, like it's pretty. The TLDR is it's the protocol set being used behind the graphical server. So i3 runs on X11, or the implementation of it, the Xorg server, and then Sway is a re-implementation of that made to run on Wayland instead.
Okay. Yeah. macOS, you don't have like a lot of different features. I'm not gonna... I'm not used to fancy stuff, so as long as I can have one application on the screen at a time. And something very important as well is this padding section that I have here. So I guess that's something that you can configure, right? So if you notice this on the right side, this is the padding section of the... Because I use the window manager in stack mode, right? So this here is just the padding that I left there. So I can keep this application there all the time, right? So even if I switch to other app, that one remains there in the padding section. So
I have never seen a window manager on Linux do that. That's actually really cool.
Yeah, but it's just the padding. It's just something that I came up with, right? So because people usually leave padding on the top, bottom, left, like everywhere, right? So I just left
right.
Just the padding on the right side and just put that application there manually. This is not managed by my window manager, right? So I can move it around. So because it's just, you know, laying there, basically.
Right. Okay. You could probably replicate something like that on i3 as well, because you can set padding. But I guess the way you would do that is you'd probably pin that window so it's going to display on every workspace.
Yep. I pinned it
that
on
would be
macOS.
the,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That would be the way I would go about that.
Probably i3 then, right?
Yeah, I reckon i3 is pretty easy to get your head around. So if you want to learn the intricacies of a Linux window manager, it's very easy to configure. It's pretty well configured out of the box. It's very well documented. There's a lot of tutorials on how to use it if there's anything you're unsure about how to use. It has a IPC that you can use to interact with it through a programming language, and it's just generally all around good. And if you then eventually want to swap over to Wayland because you learn more about how that side works and you feel like there's something there that is going to improve your experience, you can take that directly to Sway because it's one-to-one compatible.
Yeah, the problem is that I'm not gonna feel cool if I use i3. Everyone's talking about Wayland these days, and I'm gonna be making videos about i3. It's like, what the? Do you live in the 80s or something, right? So Wayland would definitely give me more content, I think.
I don't know, maybe you'd stand out still using X11. There's less and less people doing so. I think most Linux YouTubers at this point, besides like, there's a couple of people. There's one guy who he runs Debian, runs really old window managers that came out in the 90s and haven't been updated since the 90s. So I guess you can fit right in there.
Oh, I think I've seen him. Jay?
Okay, I was thinking of someone else. I was thinking of Drew, Just Guy Linux.
Okay. And one of the recommendations that DT gave me for the stability that I'm looking for, he mentioned, what about Debian stable, and you just use Flatpaks for applications that you need to run like OBS, stuff like that. What are your thoughts on that?
My only concern with Debian is how new the hardware in your system is going to be. Like if you're running, like if you want to run a really new GPU, you're going to run into problems in those first couple of months on Debian until updates start rolling out. If you're the kind of person who runs like a generation back, it won't be a problem. But Debian, it's slow to update, which means it's slow to get new hardware support. So you got to be a little bit cautious about that.
Yeah, that's the next topic, actually. What are your thoughts? Because if I'm going to build a Linux machine, probably I'll use something that I have laying around to start with. But if I decide to take it seriously, I don't want to build it myself. I know hardware compatibility is not the way that it used to be in the past, which is what was a little bit of painful. I remember my first days with the Ubuntu back in, 20 years ago, right? But
right.
I would probably purchase a System76 or a Framework laptop. What are your thoughts on those two companies?
I've personally not used their devices. I do know a number of engineers at System76. I've had the CEO of the company on the podcast a couple of times. Really cool dude. Everyone there is great people. I think they're doing great work on the software side. I can't really comment about their hardware. As I said, I've not really used it. But System76 is basically they're basically a what's the word for it? White label? Is that it? Where you take existing laptops and you like repackage them with like new software, and they install core boot on them, and install their Linux distro and things like that. So because it has their distro on it, you kind of know that it's like Linux is going to be well supported on this hardware. When it comes to Framework, I've not spoken to anyone there. I can't really comment on that, but I do know they specifically have like Linux Linux community employees there, and they are very focused on ensuring that Linux support is good, even if that's not something they are directly offering. So everything I've heard about the company, it seems like Linux support is basically perfect.
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah, those would probably be one of my two options. I think I would go more for the Framework side of things. I'm not sure, but okay.
Right.
Now, the way that I share my camera, I don't have a professional camera. This is my phone, the one that I'm using right now, and macOS just recognizes it as a camera.
Right.
I'm not planning on buying a camera. Is there some alternative that you know of in Linux that you can do something kind of similar?
Probably the easiest thing you can do is, even though it's called this, it's works on iOS as well. There is an app called DroidCam. You can use that and either over Wi-Fi or plugged into your system, use that as your camera. I don't know how quality is gonna be. I don't use DroidCam myself anymore. I've used it for a couple of things here and there. But I always used the free version, which had a 480p limit to it. I think the paid version is like $3 or something like that. So it's not like a big expense. So I can't really comment on that for the iOS ecosystem. There's definitely ways you can do it. Is it going to be the quality you get from like the macOS core integration? Probably not, but it's something you can test.
Okay, thank you. And window manager, well, we already talked about that. You prefer BSP mode, right? Tilings. And monitors, are you a single monitor guy or multiple ones?
I have 3 monitors. My layout's kind of weird. My main monitor is a horizontal monitor because obviously you need a horizontal monitor because it's a computer. I've got a vertical monitor off to my side here. This is usually where my Discord is, where my emails are, various Twitter feed, things that take up a lot of vertical space. I also have a third monitor, which is actually half behind my main monitor, where I can only see the top half of it. So I'm effectively looking at a square, and that is my glorified teleprompter. I could use an actual teleprompter, but I just put my notes right next to my camera. So if you ever watch my videos and you notice I'm looking like slightly off from where the camera is, yeah, I'm looking at my notes.
Oh, and do you read like the entire video? Like, is all written, or do you improvise in your videos? Like the new stuff that you go over?
It's gotten more scripted as I've gone on, but I don't really follow the script in a lot of cases. So I kind of use what's there to hit each point that is important. And then I usually fill in the gaps as I'm going.
Okay, great. And what terminal do you use?
Currently, I'm using Alacrity, but I have used Ghosty a couple of times. It's cool. I get it. It's cool. I've used ST. I've used Console. I've used tons of terminals, but I always just fall back onto Alacrity.
Yeah, and is there a reason?
Honestly, I have a good config for it. I have a bunch of keybinds for it that work nice. I've got it nicely configured. I've got it themed the way I want it to be. So every time I try something out, I'm like, yeah, this is nice, but now I've got to move my Alacrity config over.
Okay, makes sense. And what about your keyboard? Do you use a special keyboard, or what do you use?
Can we show it? There we go. Ooh, there we go. I have a Logitech G915. It has low profile switches. If you look up the price for it, I did not pay the full price for it. I got it half price during Black Friday. I just have a lot of Logitech hardware here, like a Logitech mouse here. I've got another Logitech mouse. I like Logitech gear. Oftentimes you don't have official configuration support for software on Linux, but Logitech has a lot of community support, so I'm pretty much I'm happy with Logitech gear. I've always liked Logitech gear, and I can configure it on Linux, so I'm kind of happy.
Have you thought about split keyboards?
I have bad typing habits. So when I try a split keyboard, it takes me a lot of time to really get comfortable using it. So it's just never really been something I've stuck with.
Okay. And which layout do you use? Is it QWERTY or something else?
Yeah, I just use QWERTY.
Okay. Normal, regular person. Yeah, I use QWERTY too. Yep. And what about Homelab? Do you have a Homelab? What are your thoughts there?
I've definitely considered messing around with some stuff. Not at this point. Like I have not a Homelab. I have a VPS for my web server, like for my website and things like that. But I know there's a lot of other people, and DT is probably a great example there with his giant audio server and a bunch of other fun stuff. I don't really have anything in that way. I've got a 4-port switch under my bed. that's my Homelab.
Okay. And what are your thoughts on AI? We're almost done here with the questions. What are your thoughts? Like, are you in favor of AI, or are you on the complete other side?
I think there's definitely use cases for it. Like, medical imaging, dealing with x-rays, things like that. I use Whisper to generate subtitles for my videos, and then I modify those by hand. So I definitely think there are use cases for it. But I feel like a lot of things, it's kind of just like, how do we eliminate as much human element to it as possible? How do we make it as cheap and easy as possible, rather than worrying about necessarily the quality? But quality's getting there. And that's the scary part, where, especially if you look at like modern demos like VO3 with modern video generation and audio generation at the same time, it's like scary good. And I think the big concern that I have is how easy it is to scam people now who are not very sort of tech savvy. It was already pretty easy with early stuff. Now it's basically almost perfect for someone who has no idea what they're looking at.
Yeah, especially they have our face, our voice in hundreds of videos, so
Yeah.
Okay. Are you working on any projects at the moment that you want to share?
It's a bit of the very early pre-alpha right now, but I've gotten into doing some game development stuff recently. I've been working with the Godot game engine, working on a little platformer. I've kind of always enjoyed doing game development. It's super early right now. Basically, just it's pretty much just built off of the Brachy's Godot tutorial. So there's not really anything to show there. It's still using all of the placeholder sprites and all that. But yeah, that's the main thing I'm doing right now. I've picked up projects here and there along the way and kind of just dropped them. But this one's sticking with me, at least for now.
Okay, and where do you share that? In your main YouTube channel or in a separate one?
Right now I haven't actually made any videos on it, but I don't know where I'm going to put it actually. I'll work that out when we get there.
Okay, wonderful. And the last stuff that I have here, last question is, what's your experience with the open source community? What's your take on it? Is it aggressive? Have you had bad experiences? What's your overall take on open source and dealing with the community and that stuff?
I think the majority of people are genuinely just trying to make something cool. Like they make something cool that they personally want and they share it, and people also like the idea and they keep up with it, and that's awesome. I do think there are certain communities and certain subsets of certain communities where I guess they've got a lot of attention for a long time and kind of feel like they're a lot more important than they really are, and kind of let that like position of like a de facto standard go to their head in some cases. Not everyone in these projects for sure, but there's definitely like everything you get involved in, whether it's gaming, whether it's sport, whether it's anything else, there's always going to be people you meet who are like, you're not a good person. I don't want to be around you any longer. But I think the majority of people just want to do something cool.
Okay. Wonderful. All right, Brodie. So I'm just going to share your channel here on my screen. Well, I guess probably all of my subscribers already subscribed to your channel because I just have a few. So I'm going to leave your links in the video description, YouTube channel. Are there any other links that I should leave there?
There's lots of links you could leave there, but if the channel is going to have all of the links to places I use, even links I don't use anymore, like the Odyssey, which I haven't uploaded to in a long time, or the Instagram, which I don't use, or the Matrix, which is 3 years dead. I need to update those links at some point. I need to get around to that one. But yeah, no, that the YouTube and the podcast are pretty much the main things, and everything else you can get to from those points.
Okay, wonderful. So again, really appreciate your time, for sharing with us. I had a lot of questions. It helped a lot, and hope to see you next time.
Absolute pleasure. I enjoyed it.
Okay, bye.